Hi everyone, it's Sandra and I'm out at my garden worm tower. This one is the most full of all of our towers, and so it's time that we took out all these castings that have accumulated since we restocked this last fall. And so it's June the 10th now. It's been 2 days since I put those radish greens in there. I see some pill bugs but no worms, and that banana peel has been hanging around for a long time. So it's time for me to get these worms as much as I can into a little bait container, and then we will reset the worm bucket. So I'm just grabbing the big stuff that I see on the top here. I'll dig down a little bit, see if I can see any more obvious big stuff. Obviously these buckets have needles in them. You see there's not a lot of worm activity in here, and I think it's because the food is in our garden. Landon and I were just mentioning how the mulch in our garden is rapidly disappearing. So at the lower right, I see lots of cocoons. Just hold up. There's lots of cocoons in here. And there are worms, there's one, but certainly not the number of worms that we've had in these buckets. So they are foraging in the garden because these castings have been worked over for months now, and they are probably tired of them. You know, the more Landon's here, the more I'm looking at this, the more I'm saying we should just pull this out right now because the worms aren't in here. What do you think, Landon?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so change of plans happens in worm farming. Landon's going to go get the wheelbarrow and one of our empty tote systems, and we are going to shift this to a harvest instead of a bait. And we'll get the worms back in this bin with some yummy new bedding and some yummy food. All right, see you in a bit. So Landon's going to pull this out of the ground. There we go. So this is our setup. Landon's just going to empty this bucket of castings from the garden worm tower onto our screen over our wheelbarrow. And we're gonna look for worms that were still hanging out in the bucket and put all of the material that goes through into a tote to age out these castings, because we know there's lots of cocoons in them. So I'll bring you back when I show you what we got. Okay, so we're going to refill the bucket now. We're going to do it lasagna style. So we've got some shredded paper, and then we've got some of our beautiful, got some horse manure. Will form an attractive home for these worms and probably has some worms in it. Yeah. Alrighty, and then we've got some overs coming. Now, Landon and I decided to do this very impromptu because we discovered that the worms had vacated the bucket to the large extent to eat the mulch in our garden, and we got our first significant rainfall in a couple months today. So as you can see, the overs are quite lumpy. So just half of that material maybe landed, and then we do it again. So we cannot get the worms out of these lumps. So, you know, some of the worms are going back. So the lesson learned from this is worms don't like living in their own castings in these towers. They will leave your tower and they will go eat your garden mulch. We've mulched twice this spring with a couple inches of beautiful leaf mulch, and it's disappearing rapidly again. And I was always so delighted to see worms in my garden. Well, now I know why the worms were in the garden is they didn't like, just even though I was feeding the tower, these castings were compressed and they were old. Been in here since probably September, August or September. All right, so just do it again, lasagna style. The overs from the harvest. And probably top it up with some manure. Okay, and so Then we're going to give it some food. Okay, so we've obviously got a worm. We've obviously got a worm already interested in the manure. He came along with the manure. So the food is a moldy lemon and some pepper seeds and some ground food. Put that in. There we go. Maybe a little bit of shredded paper on top of that. And then we're going to add the worms that we did grab from the system. We grabbed a lot of cocoons and a lot of young worms. I think the old worms had largely decided to disappear. But now we just replace this in our garden, and this tower is reset for the summer. This is the material we got out of the tower. Like I said, it went through our sifter, but it's very wet because of that significant rainfall that we had today. So, and as you can see there with my muddy fingers, there are a lot of worms in it, which is fine. This is now going to go into one of my styrofoam tote systems, and I'm going to age out all of these cocoons that are in here, because the cocoons also went through the sifter. A lot of them did. There's cocoons right there. So I'll treat this just like another aging out bin with a slight difference that there's a lot of worms in here. And as I bait out or pick out these worms, as I dry out these castings, so as I find worms, I will just bring them out to the garden tower and return them. There's a little baby. All right, so that's the garden tower reset for the summer. And these worms were skipping out on the tower for the munchies in our garden. So don't let your castings sit in your tower too long. The worms won't stick around. All right, bye for now.